Good morning, everybody. My name is Bren Lopez. I'm the manager of Children's Book World in Los Angeles, where we celebrate diversity, knowledge, and enrichment. It is a world where every child sees themselves and each other on our bookshelves. And I am so very excited to be here with my friend and one of my favorite authors and creative human beings, award winning author and publisher Wade Hudson, to talk about his magnificent new book collaboration with another favorite creator, illustrator E.B. Lewis. Invincible Fathers and Mothers of Black America. How are you this morning, Wade?
I am so grateful to be here, Brent. Thank you for this opportunity, and it's good to be with you again, brother.
I love talking to you. Our last
Yeah,
conversation was about your memoir,
that's
Defiant,
right.
growing up in the Jim Crow South. That was a huge success for you, I think. You got great reviews, but I mean, did you get a lot of responses from young people who read the book?
Oh, quite a few, and I also got a lot of responses from older readers who had read it, who um, related to the story, and I was surprised at the number of, I would say, black readers in their 50s, 60s, maybe late 40s, um, who related to the story and related to experiences that I shared in the book, and young readers as well. And I think for young readers, uh, it really helped to put a face uh, to that period of time that the book takes place, the civil rights movement. They I think are inundated with dates and names, but to really have an understanding of what it was like to live during that
Mhm.
period of time, what I think was really good for them to experience.
Oh, absolutely. And the stories that you tell, even your own personal experiences and being in the car and all of those things that were taking place. I loved, we did a talk where we talked to high school students, and I loved we got those personal stories back from the students themselves and
Hmm.
how they
Hmm.
relate to your book. And they were also personal. The kids were really responding in their own way about the impact your book made, whether they thought about their own lives.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I think it's a different time in which I grew up, but I mean, so much of what I experienced, young people are experiencing those things even today. Um, finding your place um, uh, at school, in the world, uh, finding your purpose, even at a young age. I think young people are struggling uh, to find what they are good at, and once recognizing it, working at it to make it become something they can use to make their contributions. I think that those are sort of universal kinds of things, um, and so it's a different period of time, as I said. But there's some commonalities too, in terms of what young people are experiencing today.
Absolutely. And because there are so many efforts across the country now to be able to make it difficult for these kids to actually have access to their own stories, um, it is all the more meaningful when they have access to something like this, where they can find a way to relate to it.
Oh yeah, and and I am really just so upset by this whole movement to ban books, um, and to not only just ban books, but um, undo the progress that has been made over the last 40, 50 years. Much of that progress coming out of the civil rights movement in which uh, I grew up. And So we still have a lot of work to do to fight back because we cannot allow uh, the clock to be turned back. And
Yeah.
I think that's the effort, and to make this country into a place where only a few can benefit and feel valued and worthy.
Well, before we get started on the new book, I want to talk about your collaboration with your wife, Cheryl
Uh-huh.
Willis Hudson,
Mhm.
because it is 35 years. And we talk about that in terms of what we have strived for and what we may be losing over the last 40 or 50 years. But really, though the book industry and the publishing industry has in the last few years made much stronger efforts to be able to share different types of stories with the country and in the books that they publish. You and Cheryl have been doing that for 35 years through
Mm-hmm.
Just Us Books, and I would love for you to talk about that because I feel like you have together have made such an impact because you were some of the first to make books for Black America and all America to
Exactly.
hear about Black experience through kids' books, and you were doing it at a time when very few books were actually being published.
Exactly, exactly. When we started in 1988, there were a handful of writers of color who were actually being published. You had people like Walter Dean Myers and Eloise Greenfield and so on.
Hmm.
And but even their books were not really mainstreamed. Um, they were not accessible in bookstores. Most of those books actually found their way in the library market and schools, specifically through scholastic and school book fairs. Um, so when we started, we recognized that there were a lot of Black parents, and not just Black parents, but teachers in general, Black teachers and white teachers who were looking for books that represented our country's diversity. And the problem was these books were not available. And I think major publishers uh, didn't think that there was a market for these books. In fact, before we started Just Us Books, Cheryl and I had a couple of ideas that we took to several major publishing houses in New York. Um, and one editor actually told us there was no market for these kinds of stories. Um, and another editor said, well, your books are quote for Black people, but they don't buy books. And we knew that that wasn't true, that the problem was these books were not available. Um, so Black parents didn't even look for them because they knew they were not there. So we decided rather than, pushing major publishers to acquire our manuscript, we would do it ourselves. And so we started Just Us Books. And we, at the time, we didn't know this, Brand, but we were actually picking up the baton from those who had come before us. We were not aware at the time the monumental efforts that Black folks before us had done to share our stories, to define ourselves for ourselves and for the world. We found that out as we started to do more research. So when we started, we were thinking, oh, we're starting something new. We got to do this, and we reinventing the wheel. But as we did our research, we found out about publishing efforts as far back as 1821 by the African Methodist Episcopal Church to produce their own material for church and Sunday school, reading materials for schools that were being set up by churches to teach free Blacks how to read and how to write. And so, I mean, we noted the work that we are doing and have been doing over the 35 years is important and crucial. But I think also important to us is for us to tell the story of how our ancestors have also
Yeah.
fought to define who we are and to tell our. In fact, the editorial in the first Black newspaper published in this country, Freedom Journal, and I hope I get it right. It said that we wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us about things that concern us dearly. So Black folks have been doing that since we've been here. So we've again standing on the shoulders of those who came before. Now the industry, um, we were actually breaking ground though, because we focus more on, well, exclusively on the children's book market. Uh, and getting our books into the infrastructure, the distribution infrastructure was not easy.
Hmm.
Uh, because we were among the first to do that, particularly in children's books. Now, when we started in '88, there was a renaissance in black book publishing, but mostly in the adult market. You know, um, so we were basically on our own trying to carve out a niche or a place in the children's um, book world. We went to some of the major distributors like Ingram and Bacon Taylor, and we had to foster relationships with them and sort of prove ourselves. We also went to retailers like Kmart and were able. Toys R Us had a program called Books R Us at the time,
Hmm.
and we were among the first, actually, children's publishers to be a part of that planogram. Um, so it was hard work. There were a lot of efforts that did not pan out, but many of our efforts did pan out. And I think that what we sort of helped to do was to open doors for others who came behind us. And we are just so happy to see so many other people of color who are doing wonderful work, pushing for more diversity and more inclusion. And so the landscape in children's book publishing is so much different now because of the efforts of Justice Books and others who were along with us as we push for a difference in this industry.
Well, in this new book, Invincible Fathers and Mothers of Black America, you talk about the ancestors and the footprints, the positive footprints that they created in this country to build this country in different ways. And how I see that were your efforts, though they have been efforts before and there will be more efforts after, you
Hmm.
you have kept those footprints alive. You have
Yes.
continued to walk within those footprints and deepen them and strengthen them so that they can be seen by other people. And that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I, and
So,
I think that's an important point that you're making because it's I look at it like running a long distance relay
mhm.
race. You
Passing
know,
that baton.
yeah, yeah, pass it on, and each one of us has a leg of the race to run, and if we run our race as best we can, it makes it easier for the next one to run his or her leg of the race. So, um, and I think I and Cheryl and I really recognize that now, and that's why it's so important to share that history. So, because I think for a lot of young people, particularly young black people, and I think this was true when I was growing up, you feel as if you are creating these things yourself and for the first time.
Mhm.
And that can really feel quite lonely. But if you know that there are others who have come before you, and they did the best they could, but they was there and they definitely tried and they did make a difference in many ways. If you recognize that, then you are a part of a community of folks fighting for change and to make this world a better place for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes as a society, there are people tend to sometimes they want to compare things and say, well, this already occurred, so this doesn't need to occur. But I don't think that's the case ever. I think it's actually that it's all a celebrate. You can celebrate one thing and still be able to honor the other thing
And
at
and
the
and build upon what came before. You know,
absolutely.
yeah.
So this, we're going to have you read some of the book.
Hmm.
Let's do that first, and then
Okay,
we can come back in and talk about your collaboration with E.B. Lewis and
sure.
how the book came about. So I'm going to share the screen here. I'm going to
Okay,
do that, and I'm going to move us off just a little bit here so we can see the full thing. And there we go. And you can go start, and then I will follow along.
okay. From Africa, they were captured. chained and crammed into the hulls of ships. They were human cargo destined to be sold like goods that men purchased with care. Mandinka, Fawn, Bakongo, Shamba, Abron, Fulani, Akon, Wolof, Igbo, Yoruba, Mbundu. They spoke different languages, yet the spirit of Africa beat in all their hearts. Enslaved to work the fields of the New World, to raise the white master's children, to cook their meals, to build their houses and cities, they helped create a nation. Restrictive laws sought to determine their fate. Brutal treatment was their constant companion. Yet they fought back with whatever means they could muster. See them mounting rebellions. See them running away. See them refusing to work. See them in the courtroom suing for freedom. See them handing out pamphlets that declare their right to be free. Let freedom ring became the refrain in the colonies. It rang when the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. It continued to ring when the Revolutionary War was won in 1783 and the Constitution was soon established. But freedom didn't ring for all.
Wonderful. Okay, let me put that back there, and I'm going to bring us back onto the main stage here.
Okay.
That is E.B. Let's talk about E.B. Lewis for a second.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've known E.B. Lewis, Bren, for probably 25 years, and Cheryl and I became fast friends. And ironically, even though we both carved careers out in the children's book industry, and E.B. has done more than 100 books over his career, we had never really done anything together. He illustrated my contribution to the book that the anthology we did called The Talk, and that was it. So we had been talking probably for the last 10 years about doing something together, and E.B. and I both share a keen appreciation for our ancestors and for our history as Black people. And he has always been concerned about showing our ancestors and their grandeur, their majesty, their realness. And we talked about maybe coming up with a project to do that. And during the pandemic, I had become a little bit more prolific in writing. And so I came up with the idea for this book, Invincible, showing how Black America actually began. The term Black America is used a lot, but I don't think people understood or understand how Black America began and why it began. The rich culture and the art and the institutions that make up Black America had to have a beginning, just as this country had a beginning. So I wrote this poem, and I sent it to E.B. And I said, "Well, E.B., what do you think?" And he got back to me and he said, "Man, this is it. This is it, brother." And in publishing, Gren, it's very difficult to package a writer and an illustrator together when you're pitching a project. And so a couple of publishers, sort of didn't want to deal with that. And Astra was open to that, and E.B. had done. I've never worked with Astra before, but EB had done some projects with them, and once they saw the manuscript, oh, they were excited about it, and that's essentially how the project really got started. Now, EB initially he was thinking about illustrating it like in a more traditional way, um, and I guess maybe a couple of weeks or maybe a month or more in the process, he got back to me. He said, "I'm feeling something different about illustrating this book." Um, he said, "What we are doing, we are uncovering things, we are revealing things, and we are uncovering a history that uh, has not really been told the way it should be told." And I think the art, and he didn't say illustrations, he used the term art. I think the art should reflect that. And that really set him on the course of um, doing the art in a very different way. Which, and I think he did a
He
fantastic
did.
job.
Yeah. His
And
art is normally like the which I love, or these
mhm,
very soft watercolors that are
mhm,
just so evocative and beautiful. Like you said, they celebrate the
yeah,
majesty of the characters within the actual. Um, and I love his work.
yeah, yeah,
You know, he's one of the three artists. I mean, there's so many artists, but the three artists that I think of that capture that for me. Two of them we've lost recently, which was Floyd Cooper and Jerry
good
Pink.
friend, another good friend. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and both of those people I knew as well, and they were
Mhm.
just so, you know, just so beautiful. But I love the artwork that EB created for this book because that messaging comes through the art, uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's so powerful. Now I'm gonna share another screen here so we can look at some of the images, but I'm going to skip to the image of you and EB so people can see EB. Let's see if this comes up. There we go. And let me just, let's see. There we go.
Yeah, yeah, that's we were actually I think this was at the, Publishers Weekly, Book World event,
Hmm.
and, he and I were promoting, Invincible, and the lady in the back there is Carol Yoder, who is the editor for the project, and she was phenomenal as well. EB and I have done, a few events, together, and, people really love the way that we um, connect as we talk about the book, because we also talk about uh, our journey as well, because our journey as book creators uh, is a part of the story of Invincible too. You
Hmm.
know, as I said earlier, it's a continuation, and EB is a good. In fact, we're looking at maybe working on another project. So we'll see where that goes. But no, it's the book has been well received, and there have been a number of adults who've come to our book signings, and it's amazing how much of this history that's shared in this picture book that they
Yes.
didn't know. They did not know.
Well, in addition to the poet part of the book with the artwork that you mentioned, you have an incredible timeline in history of individuals, which I love that you didn't. I love that it's sort of a jumping off point, that it
Mhm.
allows the reader to then go and do their own searches to be able to find out more information about the people that you mentioned. That runs a span of anywhere from the mid 1700s, early 1700s to the early 18, about 100 years.
1840, yeah, yeah. Actually, it ends with the first black political conference um, that was held in this country. And in fact, a few people have asked me, why did you end it there? Um, you don't have Frederick Douglass and a lot of the black heroes that are often found in books.
Mhm.
And I said, well, by that time, Black America had been established. The infrastructure that makes up Black America was firmly there by that time. You know, the institutions, the churches, the fraternal organizations had been established,
Yes.
schools, newspaper. So all of the infrastructure that really makes up what we now call Black America had been firmly established, just as the United States of America had been firmly established. And
Yeah.
I think it's important, you know, in terms of looking at that timeline, Black America was evolving and becoming established alongside of America itself. And you know, I make a point to let people know that um, Black America had to be established as a place for Black people to be because they could not participate in the social and political and economic uh, infrastructure of America. You know, so they were forced to create their own, and they did that.
Yeah, even within the abolitionist movement itself, there was still not allowed that ability to control their own voice.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Well, you know, that's an important point too, Brand, because even Frederick Douglass had a lot of problems with some of the leading white abolitionists during that time, because when he wanted to assert himself, they tried to keep him held back and relegate him to just being a face of slavery rather
mhm.
than being a thinker, you know. And so he had to actually go off on his own. As you know, he started the Black Star newspaper,
Yes.
uh, which would allow him to articulate his points of view about what slavery was all about and what the abolitionist movement should be about. So you're 100% right. And I think throughout that history, you know, Black people have been fighting to uh, share their own voice and to define themselves for themselves rather than being defined by others, like in Uncle Tom's Cabin, for example.
Yes. You know, I want to go back to this image. This is not part of the timeline for yourself, but this image here of the when you say see them in the courtroom suing for freedom, I was thinking of, you know, and again, you talk about how images and the words can inspire you to think about other people. I
Hmm.
was thinking about somebody who is I am fascinated by, and that was the attorney, and I believe he was one of the first congressman, John Mercer Langston,
Yeah, yeah,
who I know had several important trials where he was suing on the rights of freedom, but also he defended an amazing woman, Indigenous and African American artist, Mary Edmonia Lewis, in a trial.
exactly. Hmm.
Which is we could go on. I could go into a rabbit hole on that particular story, but um, I just
But
want
you
to.
know, Brent, yeah, you know, it's Black people have been suing for freedom since colonial days. I mean, they sued for freedom and won some cases in the late 1700s. You
Well,
know,
George Washington's own servant,
exactly, exactly,
own a
exactly.
judge, right? That
Yeah,
is
yeah,
so.
yeah. And I think it's important for us to share that information because what I used to hear a lot when Cheryl and I would speak to uh, young students, particularly Black students, they would always ask, "Well, why didn't Black people fight back then?" You know, and I think they would ask that question because they really didn't understand um, the resistance movement um, that has been going on since Black folks have been enslaved in this country,
Mhm.
and it's a shortcoming on on our behalf because we really need to tell those stories so that they will understand, that our ancestors did fight back in many, many ways. And so that's what this little section or this page is saying, listing some of the ways that we did fight back.
And you start at- we talk about those footprints that you step into, but
Hmm.
here you are writing this poem and having this impact, but you start back with Jupiter Hammond and Phyllis Wheatley,
Exactly.
poets themselves, creating work to put out into the world for other people to be able to read.
And establishing their voice, and not
Hmm.
only establishing their voice, but showing and demonstrating the intellect that Black folks have too. Uh, you know, because for so long, Black people were portrayed as buffoons and non-thinkers and not having a brain. In fact, there were some white scientists who tried to prove that the Black brain was not the same size as the European brain, and they used, this kind of misinformation to justify slavery. Um, and so we've always had to prove that we belong to the family of humankind, and so Black people struggled um, to express themselves, struggle to define themselves, struggle to express how they saw the world when, again, they were seen as subhuman,
Hmm.
subhuman. And in fact, Phyllis Wheatley, when she's credited with having the first book of poetry published, and it actually had to be published in England. But in order for her to get it published, she had to get attestations from people like John Hancock that she had actually written those poems. And the attestations were actually in the beginning of the book, you know, uh, saying that she had written these poems.
Well, that's an incredible thing because you think about John Hancock, and all we think about with John Hancock is that he wrote his signature really large
Yeah, yeah.
on the thing. But here is something where where he wrote this attestation to
Mhm.
be able to allow this woman to be able to publish her poems.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
here's an even stronger impact that he made on our ability to be able to still have this art, um,
And
which
that
is
and that was not an easy thing for him to do. I mean, he was going counter to the norms at the time for him to say that this Black woman actually uh, wrote these poems.
that's so very interesting. I did not know that. Now I want to bring back some of the photos so we can go through those while with the
Mhm.
time we have left. So let me just go ahead and make this the focus. There we go. And that is the cover of your. Oops, let me go back real quick. That was the cover of your last book, Defiant.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, and again, that book is still doing well, and the paperback came out, I think maybe 4 months ago. The paperback
Uh-huh.
version came out about 4 months ago, and there's an audio book as well that I am reading. um, so again, I mean, it's about telling our stories, um, and I think we have focused more on the icons of Black history, and that's important. People like Dr. King, but I think now you're starting to see more books about what I would call unsung heroes uh, of the struggle, um, and I think it's important that we share those stories because those stories, I think, empower younger people because they illustrate that we all can make a difference. We don't all have to have the 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 the, the flowing oratorical skills of Dr. King,
Yes.
to make a contribution. We don't all have to have the the majesty of the pen that James Baldwin had in order to make our contributions. There are so many ways that we can work and use the gifts that we have to make this a better world.
Oh, I
And
mean,
that's a challenge for all of us to make this a better world for everybody.
absolutely, to be able to stand in line for 15 hours to be able to cast your vote, and
Yes,
then fight through all the hurdles that are created to obstacles to stop you from being able to do that is as impactful as those other things as you.
exactly. And especially if you are someone who's 85 years of age or 90 years of age, but you're still willing to stand in that line to cast your vote. That's a
Yeah,
hero. That's a hero.
absolutely. Let's give. I want to go through now here. Because for the last book, you've got another book coming, but here we have a picture. So you've been going around to schools. What's that experience like?
Oh, it's awesome. You know, students are curious. They want to know more about the world in which they live. They also want to know more about the past, in spite of the fact that some people want to hide that information from them. And we get a lot of great, engaging questions from them. And actually, doing school visits helped to solidify my hope for the future because I think we have a lot of bright youngsters who get it, man, who understand the importance of diversity and the importance of loving each other. I mean, there's certainly going to be a little small issues here and there, but I think they recognize that we are all in this world together.
Well, and I see that every day the bookstore, because we have such a great group of kids that come in, and I do, and you have conversations with them, you understand how deeply they think about these things,
Yes, yes.
and we try to hide something that we think is above their heads, but it's not above their heads. It's
Not
really
at
within
all.
their
Not at
bones.
all. And
Uh,
and in fact, we can't hide stuff anyway because 'cause they're gonna find out, man. Social media or from their friends. So it's very little that we can hide from them.
yeah.
It's foolhardy to think that we can. It's better to engage them rather than trying to keep things from them.
Let's talk about your new book, which is coming out in January, and this is uh, a middle grade book.
Yeah, it's
Six.
it's a middle grade novel. It actually has a setting in a small town in the South in Louisiana. Most of the books that focus on Black experiences for young readers take place in urban settings. There are very few books that actually take place in small towns, and I wanted to capture what it's like um, for young people growing up in a small town, particularly in the South. So it focuses on 12-year-old Lamar who wants to be a filmmaker, and Spike Lee is uh, is someone he idolizes, and he's seen all of Spike Lee's movies. And what I'm also doing, Bren, is trying to capture all of the nuances and complexities of a period of time in which we found ourselves um, dealing with Black expectations,
Mhm.
dealing with certainly with racism, dealing with the backlash against progress. Um, and in the story, um, Lamar is getting to know his grandfather, which he didn't really know his grandfather was active in the civil rights movement. And as he's getting to know his grandfather is key, um, in a comfort a confrontation that takes place on a highway. A white man actually shoots him and kills him. And so the story plays out whether or not the white man will be held accountable. The protests that take place as black people and those who support them uh, fight to get the truth out. And it's torn from the pages of today's headlines. But again, I'm also uh, trying to deal with the complexity of race, of complexities of black people um, understanding their uh, responsibility to their community. So it's a lot in there. A friend of mine who is a filmmaker has expressed interest in doing it as a movie. So we'll see where that goes. Yeah,
Well, it sounds.
he
I
loves it.
can't wait to read it.
Yeah,
In fact, I'm gonna get a copy of it so that I can. I love to be able to read books in advance so that I can share them with people when it comes out and let them
exactly.
know what it's about. And I've got one more. Let me click on this real quick. What? The
Oh,
Day
you got
Madeira.
yeah, yeah. This is a book. It's actually based loosely based on the first day that my mother voted. My mother grew up in a little small town in the South, and for more than perhaps half of her life, she was not able to vote. Because of the Jim Crow laws. And so I wanted to capture the importance of voting as through her eyes and that experience. And so this book is coming out. Um, oh, Don Tate is the illustrator. He's another fantastic
Yeah.
illustrator. And this book is coming out in July of 2024, and it's published by Nancy Paulson Books. And I'm excited about it. My mother is deceased now, but it's again loosely based on uh, her first day of voting, and also I tie it in toward the end of the book to the importance of uh, Barack Obama being elected the first black president, and again through the eyes of my mother.
It is. I'm gonna go ahead and take that off there. It is. I just love that you are continuing to. You've been doing this for several decades now.
Hmm.
You've probably been writing much longer than that, but that you continue. It's almost like you've got a whole. It's interesting because COVID was such a hard time for so
Yeah.
many of. We dealt with losses and we dealt with so many hardships. But in some ways, it was also a space for people to recalibrate their lives in
Hmm.
different ways. And as that seems like that's happened for you, that
Yeah.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
you're do-
Yeah. In fact, I think that period of time was, I guess, the most creative I've been over the last 30 plus years. And when I was much younger, I mean, that's all I would do would write.
Mhm.
But running a publishing company requires a lot of work, um, and so I did not have the time to really just dedicate to writing. But during the pandemic, I wrote the day Mother voted. I wrote Invincible. I wrote The Reckoning. Cheryl and I did several anthologies. I'm working on now an adult novel that actually uh, came to life during the pandemic. So um, it was really a very, I mean, I lost a lot of friends during the pandemic, and it was a stressful time. But I think writing provided an outlet for me as well, a release to sort of get away from what was happening and to sort of immerse myself into really a whole nother world. Because when you're writing, you're creating, you know, um, another world. You're creating people. So then you have to, as a writer, inhabit that world that you're creating in order to do a good job at it. So I sort of got lost in the worlds that I was creating through the written word.
As we finish up, I want to just bring back to where we started, because with what you just said, what my mission is and what our mission is here at Children's Book World is that every child sees themselves on our bookshelves, but they also see each other. And
Yes.
that's really what you're talking about, is
Hmm.
which every author is creating. You're creating your world. Sometimes it'll be a completely imaginary world that you've created, but
Hmm.
frequently it'll be a world that represents you or your history, or something like, from
Yeah.
your past. But you're showing people, allowing them to see you,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
and that makes you as a reader a stronger person,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And seeing me, all the characters that I create, but also seeing themselves um, uh, in those characters too. Um, I think that what's really crucial, particularly at this point in time, is that we find ways to lift up empathy. And I think being able to inhabit the world of someone else, um, to walk in their shoes as you're reading, you're actually inhabiting the character in the world that has been created for you. Um, it offers more opportunities to be empathetic to people who are different from you, and that's why I'm so hopeful um, about the future as it relates to young people, because the books that you are offering them there, the books that we are creating, um, is really going to will really empower them uh, to be better people. Uh, and I think we are still dealing with the residue of folks who did not want to know anything about folks who were different from themselves, you
Yes,
know, and we are still, fighting against that world they created, so we can create another world where we all can be a part of it.
absolutely. I'm going to leave it on that note because I think that's a powerful note, and we can leave it on empathy, because to me that is the secret weapon.
Yes, yes,
And that's what is so scary to those who would like to divide versus unite, like you
that's right.
say.
That's right.
And it is always such a pleasure being able to speak with you, Wade.
Same here, Brandon. Listen, continue to do the awesome work that you're doing. I know that you're making a major difference, and all of us have our roles to play, man, and
We're
making
all in
this
it together.
work. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And I look forward to reading the new book, which is coming out in January. And I wanted to just say, you mentioned Astra. I am shout out to Astra, because they're a new publisher, relatively new publisher.
Yes. Yeah.
They're doing some amazing books with some amazing authors and
Yes, they
illustrators,
are.
and I've been so happy to see. I think I've done 4 talks with different authors from Astra in the last 2 years, and their
Yes.
books
Yes.
are just so interesting to me. And I hope they keep it up, because
I
they're
think they
doing
will.
some
There's
great.
some good people there, and I think they will. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So shout out to Astra. Okay, thank you so much,
Thank you,
everybody.
Brandon.
And this is going to be available not only for you to be able to watch through your schools, but we're going to put it on YouTube as well on our channel, so that it can be shared out, and you'll be able to share it to your friends and such, and to librarians, especially in states and places where there is no access.
Yes,
Uh,
indeed.
so we're
Yes.
going to make sure to do that. Okay, bye bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.
One second.